All right, we're back here. I'm still Joe Lossett here with Julian Knab for another couple rounds, where we've got round 4 coming up next. But first, now I've been pulling up deck lists, or I prepared deck lists to pull on our guests and get their reactions to them. But apparently, Julian came with a deck list that I haven't seen yet, and we're supposed to look at that, I think. So if we have whatever this is, okay. So
that's the best way to describe it, right? Okay.
All right. So we have Isochron Scepter. We have no Orm's Chance. So we have Control Magic. All right. What are we Isochron Sceptering? Just
ideally Assassin's Trophy.
Sure. I don't even know what Demir Charm does. I think it lets you impulse. Like you can look at 3 cards and take 1, and then does it counter a sorcery or something?
It's slightly worse actually. It counters a sorcery. It destroys a creature with, is it power or I don't even remember, either power or convert mana cost 2 or less. I think it's power. And it can look at the top 4 cards of somebody's deck, and then you basically put 3 in the graveyard and you keep 1 on top. So if you were to put that onto a scepter, you'd basically mess up that draw step every time.
I see.
Which is also a way to play the game, I guess. Sure. But yeah, I can't take credit for the deck. The deck's actually coming from a viewer of my stream, Lou at Pendrevale or at Nkrenko on Twitter. And I think his actual name is Patrick. So the deck goes by Chateauneuf du, and I thought it was Pa, but since his name is Patrick, I guess Pat. And yeah, this is something else, right? It's reminiscent of some kind of vineyard. Apparently, there's a really famous French wine, the Chateauneuf, and that's what it's named after because of the Aladamis vineyard. We are trying to be a Nickfit deck that's just skipping that whole thing about veteran explorer and cable therapy, and we go straight into 4 mana on the second turn.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. My only experience really with Eldrami's Vineyard was, I know way back in the day. I mean, it wasn't my experience, but I know it got played a little bit because back in Mana Burn days, since it makes 2 green, conceivably your opponent might not be able to spend it, and they would Mana Burn. That was a different use, multiple generations of the rules ago. I don't even know what to say about this deck. There's an Elder Gargaroth in the deck.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, sure, why not? If you have Green Sun Zenith and you need a 5-drop, you might as well put it in there. This is wild. I don't even know what to say about this.
Yeah, when I was given the deck, I thought it was a total meme deck, but I figured I want to play it because there's so many awesome cards in it. But I think I ended up going 3-2 in the league, and I certainly didn't play it well. As it turns out, the most potent thing in the entire deck was the Isochron Scepter, because Isochron Scepter and Assassin's Trophy is vindicated instant speed every turn, because you don't even care all about the mana, right? They already have so much mana because of the vineyards, and they will also eventually just run out of basics. So that's basically the story of the deck. Isochron Scepter plus Trophy, and the rest is really just anything on top.
All right. Well, that's the deck, I guess. Yeah, you can play anything you want. Like I said, if you go 3-2 with that in the link, congratulations. I mean, if you can go 5-0 with Tribal Giants, sure. 3-2 with Eldrami's Vineyard, Green Sun Zenith, whatever works. That's great. Legacy is awesome right now. I think we still have a couple minutes until the matches are ready to go. So let's give Julian another shot. Let's give him the combo Merfolk deck. Oh, I take it back. The match is ready. Okay, so we are watching Kellen Pastore versus David Ruiz. Artifact Storm versus Jeskai Miracles. The Artifact Storm deck is the deck that I was interested in playing a fair amount of the last couple weeks, versus Jeskai Miracles, which we saw earlier today in the hands of a different player. So, Julian, do you have any experience with this Artifact Storm deck? You know what's going on here?
I've played it a couple of months ago, and I enjoyed it quite a lot because Mystic Forge is one hell of a card.
Yes.
I don't know if there's any kind of combo built into it now, because I think there used to be a thing with Serda, but that's of course banned now. So now I'm not exactly sure whether you can actually go infinite or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So apologize. This isn't a crisp view. This is probably based on the internet connection relay between the players and us. But so the potential for the heavyweight cards in the deck are the Mystic Forges and the Karns. The combo is that with Basalt Monolith, and this is kind of a new development, Basalt, some enterprising player discovered that with Basalt Monolith and Mesmeric Orb, you can tap for 3, spend the same 3 to untap the monolith, and mill yourself 1 card. So this has 2 relevant factors in the deck. One is that you can just dig for Echo of Eons. You can just mill yourself as many cards as you want until you find it and then flash it back. The other thing is that with Mystic Forge letting you play off the top of your deck, you can mill off the top card as many times as you want. And so you can basically play your deck and just clear out all the lands and uncastable, undesirable cards. So those are the combos that are built into the deck now. Landing your 4 mana Haymaker cards is somewhat difficult, so there are Defense Grid's main deck in order to be able to fight against counters, and that is basically the deck as it currently exists.
Okay, so basically you can go through your entire deck and replay a lot of stuff that goes through graveyard, say, Lotus Petals and I guess Mox Opals if you play those. And that way you can actually generate a ton of mana with the Echo of Eons until they have all been exiled. And that's probably going to give you enough looks at the entire deck in mana to cast all the... Okay, this is pretty insane. Is this like capable of completely closing out the game like by turn 3 or 4 or something?
This deck can... I have won numerous games on turn 1. It's not common, but it can definitely happen. It is more realistic to win somewhat slower games than that, obviously, but it can win. The deck can win very quickly. For example, if you just put out, some fast mana and then Lion's Eye Diamond, Echo of Eons into a new hand, you can keep rolling from there. If you play turn 1 Mystic Forge, you can sometimes just win off of that if the cards line up well enough. This deck is...
When you say win, do you mean like getting the Karn lock going, or is there like an actual dedicated win?
So there are a few options as to how you can win. There is Karn Wish for Mycosynth's Lattice to win the game. There is in Walking Ballista, sometimes you can just build it up enough to shoot the other person. There are a couple other potential win conditions. There are Aetherflux Reservoir to shoot the opponent for 50.
That's the one where you keep putting counters on it, or how does it work?
It's a 4 mana artifact, and whenever you play in a spell, you gain life. It's basically Storm. Every card you play has Storm gain life.
Okay.
And then the artifact itself also has pay 50. There you go. Aetherflux Reservoir. It also has pay 50 life, shoot anything for 50. So you can just play a bunch of free artifacts, gain a lot of life, and then kill the opponent. That's actually a very clean way to win. I don't believe Kellen Pastore is actually playing that. He is playing the 5 mana artifact that allows you to I don't remember the name off the top of my head. Parallax Engine, I believe, and that allows you to generate a good jillion mana and win that way. But in order to make any of this happen, you do need to resolve one of these Haymaker spells. And we see our opponent here has played a force and has a counterbalance on the board, and has another force pitching another counterbalance. So this is I'm talking a lot here about kind of the theory of how the deck works, but it certainly can brick out if the opponent disrupts you too much, and it looks like David Ruiz, in a combination of counters, is looking fairly strong here.
But we still have some breathing room, right? The click is not going to kill us right away.
Right.
Wouldn't be bad to find some kind of blue source, I guess. But even then, we would need like 2 blue sources to cast the Echo of Eons, because right now we're not really putting it into graveyard. Does the deck play Lion's Eye Diamond?
It does. Typically it runs 4 Lion's Eye Diamonds. Kellen I believe, has moved 1 into the sideboard as a wish target, which is certainly reasonable. But okay. Voltaic Key is a nice draw if it can resolve here.
It's one of the few things that can actually get countered by counterbalance.
Yeah.
I mean, if you lose a Mystic Forge to a blind flip chase, that's probably going to hurt.
That would be painful, yeah.
I say that as somebody who has had a game-winning Kraut Behemoth countered by Dig Through Time.
Oh, that's...
You never forget.
Yeah, I believe that. All right, so Snapcaster Mage here on Brainstorm to try and set up a 1-drop, and Kellen's not even going to see what happens. Just going to pack it in. Okay, so we don't have deck lists available, but I can walk you through what the artifact deck is likely to have. It's going to have its Defense Grid's main deck. It may have copies of Hope of Jirapur in the sideboard as another way to get through counter magic. It may have additional cards, the 4-drop card that can make tokens as additional ways to pressure control deck. But really what's going to be looking for... Sorry?
Yeah, I was just, as you mentioned the Karn, I think I've seen our player on Twitter just yesterday talking about how he actually managed to beat a Null Rod with this deck by just casting Karn, not the Great Creator, but the other one, Scion of Ursa, and just making tokens and getting in there and getting in there. And that's the kind of resiliency I want to see out of a deck like that, right? So your main game plan doesn't work, you still got the power. Yeah,
that's something that certainly can happen. As far as the blue-white Miracles deck, this is, so interestingly, this is the third variety of Miracles we've seen today. We've seen Jeskai, we've seen Bant, and I guess, oh no, I'm sorry, this is Jeskai also. So,
I mean, there are some straight-up blue-white lists out there. I guess the upside would be back to basics, but yeah, looks like we're playing the Jeskai version here.
All right, so Kellen on him, both players on a mulligan, and this Artifact Storm deck does mulligan quite a bit. This hand, however, is it's pretty okay. Oh, actually, it looks like maybe we're on a Mulda. Are we on 5? We are on 5.
But for a 5, this is really good, right?
Yeah, this is totally fine. We have, and we're against a 6, and so Kellen can throw a Defense Grid here, and if this resolves, and this is basically a must counter, and this is the kind of the clinch you put on the control decks. Is Defense Grid is a cheap, as far as this deck is concerned, card that has to be dealt with if you want to deal with anything else. So 2 counters.
Yeah, especially since the deck is capable of running out like Haymakers in the second and the third turn. So you can't even be like, oh, maybe they struggle, maybe I can like wait it out. No, you can't wait out the defense grid here. You have to count that.
So this is going to be tough here, as Kellen is going to be nearly all in, which is frequently what happens. And the Karn Scion of Ursa is good, but
it's just a little naked. Oh, if that's a spell pierce, we're probably already closing the match.
Yeah, and that if it is, then Kellen's gonna be needing to draw Lion's Eye Diamond.
Ooh, the brainstorm. This is like the moment you already hover over the concede button because you see the blue mana coming down, and it's like, oh, it's just brainstorm. So what do you do from here? Do you just aggressively make assuming it resolves, right? Do you aggressively make the tokens, or do you just like try to climb back into the game with the card advantage?
I think you plus. I think you try and get something going with cards. You're gonna want a token at some point to be able to attack planeswalkers, but I don't think you need that yet. So I believe, and Lion's Eye Diamond was the other card. So Kellen will have the option, in as long as the card stays in play, of picking up that Lion's Eye Diamond and then Echo of Eons to reset both players' hands.
And potentially getting a land drop and some other stuff, and setting up for a really, really good turn afterwards.
Yeah. Now, it's not something you ideally want to do after your opponent has Force of Will, because they're down cards, but you're down more cards. One nice thing about the Lion's Eye Diamond Echo of Eons, if in a bad situation, there have been plenty of hands where, because this deck does mulligan often, you can potentially, that's an unfortunate draw, you could mulligan down to 4, and if you have a Soul Land, a Defense Grid, a Lion's Eye Diamond, and an Echo of Eons, then you get a new set of 7 cards, and you're right back in the game. And it's basically not stoppable, barring double Force of Will. That's an unusual scenario, although it does happen. As we see here, the Karn pluses again.
Yeah, and as Karen was going through the deck list provided by David, we saw 2 Nylrods on the other side of the board, or on the other side of the list. So Nylrod would be a card. I mean, we are probably like okay-ish set up to try and beat that, but we certainly would prefer to have a couple more lands in play to do that.
Yeah. All right. Diamond. So this turn, Kellen minuses the Karn to grab the Crystal Vein out of the sideboard.
Oh, and nothing else. Okay. Are we just gonna Pastore here, or are we gonna try to make, like, we could go all in and try to resolve a Forge. We could try something with Echo, but it's probably not worth it.
There are multiple different ways Kellen could try and go all in here. One thing I would say is that if Counterbalance comes down, I don't want the Lion's Eye Diamond to get countered by a land reveal. So I think the Lion's Eye Diamond should be put into play basically immediately.
And you think we should probably like keep the counterbalance in because there's so many 0 mana artifacts that we still get to catch?
I think it's worth doing. We know David left him in because one got pitched to a counterbalance to a Force Will already.
True.
So we do know that happened. There is a Spell Pierce.
Okay, I kind of gotta say I really like Kellen's position here. Miracles is down to 3 cards. We haven't seen a Null Rod yet. It's probably gonna give us the Echo, I would guess.
I would think so. I don't imagine we'll receive the Defense Grid. And again, I would like to see the Lion's Eye Diamond on the board right now. But this is
interesting. If I'm thinking about it from Kellen's perspective, am I really scared of anything happening to my tokens? I'm not 100% familiar with how the deck is built, but I would think there's not too many creatures. And with nothing happening on the other side of the board, I would guess there's maybe, like a chase in hand, maybe more counter magic. Okay, but with 4 mana and nothing, there's probably also no chase. This is kind of hard to read, but I mean...
Drawing that Ancient Tomb,
it's fine.
Drawing that Ancient Tomb is a big draw. Is now Defense Grid can be deployed and get through a Spell Pierce if there's a Snapcaster Mage to flashback the one in the graveyard. Now, currently, even if the Defense Grid resolves, a Force of Will or a Spell Pierce could still be cast and paid for. But things are going to get harder.
Okay, so this ends up being the Snapcaster Mage you talked about. I mean, it makes sense, right, to get it down, just so you can put some pressure on the card, because you gotta do something about it. Even if you get to give your opponent the lesser of 2 evils, eventually that's just gonna be too much. What are you actually looking for from Kellen's perspective? Is there anything you're looking for, or do you think you can just like keep going with this and eventually you will overload the counter magic?
I mean, I think that is commonly the way you win. The Null Rods, knowing your opponent has 2 Null Rods makes things much more scary, as there's a definite clock on you, as generally Null Rod coming down ends the game. The Brainstorm was cast there. This Defense Grid may actually resolve. We'll wait and see.
I mean, if the Defense Grid resolves here, do you move semi all in on the Forge because you know it's gonna resolve? I don't know. It feels awkward to basically sacrifice 2 out of 3 lands for that.
Right. Well, let's see. There's more. Okay, another Brainstorm. Yeah, and because the land was already made this turn, I still think maybe you. I mean, it's sort of tempting because Forge is the strongest card in the deck by far. Okay, the Defense Grid is in. I think you do it. And it looks... Now, it's important that the Basalt Monolith gets cast first. It is free, and Kellen does do that. As it doesn't... You don't get any mana. Like Grim Monolith, you gain mana the turn you cast it. Basalt does not work that way, so you want to just have it on the board. And then
so
now
potential to later on do that static op thing, and also to potentially like grow tokens later on. Like it doesn't hurt you to do it, especially if you might end up echoing anyways.
Right, and it gives you the chance to use Voltaic keys and such. Okay, so here we go. Echo of Eons is cast. Both players will reload their hands. This is an unfortunate setup for Kellen, as he doesn't draw any free mana. No Petals, Mox Opals, Lion's Eye Diamonds. And now...
this is the turn, right? This is the turn where you're like, okay, no Null Rod, please, please, please. Is there even any way for the deck to remove Null Rod, or is it really just Karn minus and hope to get there with the tokens?
Yeah, that's really all there is. So I would say at this point, it is null rod or bust for David Ruiz. But with multiple null rods in the deck, there's certainly a decent chance that he'll have one. I'm trying to think now if there were alternatives for Kellen as opposed to going for the
Echo of Eons.
Yeah, and I think it was okay. It certainly wasn't mandatory, as the board position was looking okay, but I understand doing it. It's still a defendable position.
Yeah, so we knew we were gonna draw that. Really not too much we can do here. Okay, it looks like we're actually going to start getting those creatures out there. How big are they going to be? This is going to be like at least a 3/3, maybe even bigger.
It'll be a 3/3 now, but it will be actually significantly bigger than that once the rest of this stuff is played out. And additionally, a Walking Ballista can come out.
Yeah, this is where the beatdown starts now.
Mm-hmm.
And next turn, we can run out like Grim Monolith, maybe even a defense grid that alone is going to make the thing a 6/6. Then we minus again, that's a 7/7. Snapcaster Mage won't be able to block with the Walking Ballista on the board. So this should be over in 2 attacks.
Yeah, we're getting to the point where Null Rod may not be enough. I think Null Rod now is still pretty good, but if there's nothing else, it's survivable.
Yeah, I mean, what are your options to get rid of like the giant construct? I would guess there's not all sorts of plowshares or terminus in there anymore. Even though with open deck lists you have to respect a potential hope of Girapur, which you mentioned. I mean, we don't know whether it's actually in the sideboard, but it might be. So maybe there's some sorts of plowshares left. But I mean, all of that starts with Nylrod, right? And like you mentioned, if we don't see Nylrod now, we probably won't see any of it for the rest of the game.
Well, I don't think we have Null Rod in hand. Otherwise, I think David would have just thrown it onto the board immediately. Not that you'd have to worry about any sort of interaction from the Artifact Storm deck, but the defense grid is symmetrical, so David knows that Kellen is locked out of doing anything right now.
What are the other options? Like, what would David even consider here? Like a disenchant on something? I don't know. There's not too much we can really have. Mentor maybe if he has that. Try to make something, but Mentor is not great against the Walking Ballista, especially with defense grid and stuff. There's a moat. Interesting.
Yeah, I noticed that, and that's not a card that you see all that often these days. I wouldn't expect that to still be in the deck, but it's possible, I guess. Although I'm not sure that that's great unless you have the Null Rod alongside it. Yeah. David may have another. David maybe has another Council's Judgment here, and he's trying to decide what to target. Okay, he decides to go with Brainstorm instead.
I mean, maybe the Brainstorm finds the Nylrod. Okay, there's 2 back to basics. 1 disenchant.
Yeah, brainstorming does seem like the best decision. It being unclear what the other options are, because finding Null Rod is the best possible thing.
I mean, the other option, like you mentioned, is if we find another Snapcaster Mage, then we can Council's Judgment again, get rid of the Karn, and then we gotta hope that Kellen doesn't really have anything else going on, which is the case as of right now. So, I mean, other than like the giant creatures. But yeah, this. What would you tap for this way? Disenchant. Okay.
Disenchant on defense grid.
Okay. So we want to do something on the opponent's turn?
Well,
I guess he must be sitting on a lot of counter magic then.
Right.
But we fetched, so we still want to get something going this turn. Is this like Narset? Or like Teferi bounce the token. Oh yeah, Teferi bounce the token is nice. Or even like, we could bounce the Walking Ballista, but then we lose Teferi. I mean, we lose Teferi either way, probably. So we bounce the token. Yeah, I guess we got to bounce the token because otherwise we just like shoot the Teferi and then maybe even shoot them and they don't draw a card. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good turn considering we didn't hit Nylrod.
Yeah. Now, Kellen certainly is going to have options here, including growing the Ballista potentially is something that's on the table. Okay, it's attacking right now. Yeah, you definitely shoot that down. And Karn can be cashed in for a token here. I don't necessarily expect that to happen. Ooh.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
And we can even start off with the that's so annoying. Mm-hmm. Defense grid first, trade for the Forceful again. We did all that work to get rid of that one. Yeah, this. I mean, you could technically let it resolve and hope that Kellen doesn't have anything else going on this turn, and then next turn you untap and you can spend the 3 mana on the Forceful. But that's not what's happening here. We can actually get another Karn down if we want to.
Right. So there are options here. With the Seeded Traders and both Grim Monoliths, Karn can be cast and Liquid Metal Coding could be wished for and played to somewhat hinder the development. I
guess the first step is to just get rid of the Teferi here. We can just like attack it.
Right.
Basically. Then, yeah, okay. You can just like plus see what we have, what we find, because you already pointed out that we got a pretty good line going on here.
Mm-hmm. Finding any cheap mana source would not be a bad thing. And Kellen, some of them may have been boarded out because certainly he has not drawn a high quantity of them so far.
It's also going to be interesting that even if they have Nylrods, if we have enough lands, we can just get Karn down and basically shut them out of the game with the Magnificent Letters.
Mm-hmm.
So, lots of pressure on David to really come up with something big next turn. And I mean, we keep repeating ourselves, right? We want to see a Nylrod, but with every single turn, the impact of it is going to be so much smaller. And I don't know. If we didn't see a Nylrod here, and I think we saw Fetchland after the Brainstorm, so there might be a fresh draw coming up. But yeah, it's got to be something impactful.
So it's going to be second defense grid. I feel like in this spot, I would have played... Well, yeah, actually, the Karn can still be played. So, given that we're tapping those monoliths, I assume that we are playing the Karn. I don't know what we're doing with the Karn now, since we've expended our mana for the turn.
Yeah. I wouldn't hate the coding. I wouldn't hate the letters. The letters can be awkward. I guess actually what the second defense grid does is if you get the letters down, they can't float mana and cast a disenchant.
Mm-hmm. Lattice actually gives us a way to beat Nullrod. Because if the Lattice is suited for it here, if Nullrod comes down, with 2 defense grids on the board, the Lattice won't be able to be stopped, and then it can just be hard cast, and Ballista can attack 14 times for the win. Or other Karn can make tokens. Yeah, this is... I do kind of like this. I was actually thinking to myself, I would have played the Wish Karn and then maybe animated the defense grid and attacked just to get more damage in, and then have Lattice wishable next turn, but I like this. I think this is fine also. And
yeah, considering the deck list and from everything we've seen, it seems almost impossible for David to have anything here. When even Nylrod plus, Disenchant or something is not going to be good enough, then what is?
Mm-hmm. All right, so Council Judgment here to take down the Wish Karn so that the Lattice doesn't just end the game. It's worth noting that even though Kellen's under no life total pressure, his Ancient Tombs are eating him up. This play here... go ahead.
We just make another token. Actually, no. How big is the card? It's so tiny now. My eyes are so bad. I think it's a 3, so we could technically make a token.
Yeah. Okay, so now the drawing of the Voltaic Key, along with Inventor's Fair in hand, there's a lot of mana available for Kellen to do.
Is there anything you want to grab from the deck? I guess another Forge would be pretty sweet.
Yeah, Forge is generally the go-to card, unless there's some sideboard hate piece that you think is effective in the matchup that you boarded in. Let's see, how the available mana right now looks like 7. So that is not enough to search for and play the Forge, but okay, token looks like it's going to be made. I would like the Inventor's Fair on the board, I think, just to start gaining life. It's not a requirement. You could just leave the City of Traders for now.
Yeah, it looks like we're just sitting back here.
Yeah.
And then next turn, it's like you mentioned, it's probably gonna be the Forge, depending on what happens this turn, of course. But I mean, even if a Nylrod eventually comes down, the Forge can still kind of operate under it, which is quite nice. So this must be it, right? 2 mana.
Yeah,
that's the one.
So I think you put a counter on Ballista and shoot the
Snapcaster Mage, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wait, we're like letting the Ballista die. Okay.
All right.
So basically, this is a call of: do I want to have 4 more life, or do I want to get rid of or keep my 1/1 around?
Right.
I guess the only other option would be to untap like another Grim Monolith if that's what you want to be doing. But we value the 4. I mean, the 4 life kind of makes sense if you think you're still going to be spending a lot of mana on other stuff. So yeah, is this Chase? Oh, it's Chase.
No. So the Ballista, it was this is a shame because the Lannis would have locked the game out for both players. If the Ballista was still alive, Kellen would win the game because he would have a 1/1 and neither player would be able to do anything.
Oh god. Okay, so now if you run out the Lattice, do you just like win by decking?
If he's ahead on cards, he would. 38, 39. Oh my gosh, he did.
You deck first. He's typing in the chat right now. Oh my god. And David is like, oh,
this is an interaction modern players might be more familiar with this setup having happened before, but it's fairly unusual in Legacy. But yes,
that's how it goes.
Yeah, Null-Rod plus Lattice alone turns every single permanent into an artifact that is unable to do anything, and thus the players will deck. Let's go and put the deck lists up since we have them now before they get Game 3 started. Here is the Artifact Storm of Kellen Pastore that a number of people have been tweeting about and playing recently in the last few weeks, including me. It's not an original deck, but it has seen some upgrades lately. The Mesmeric Orb, let's just check. There is one, has increased the capabilities of the deck somewhat. And sideboard options are somewhat varied. Karn Zion of Urza is a way to pressure control decks. There is one Hope of Jeriper. Let's go to the other deck list. I know you didn't get a word in there, Julian. I'm sorry. I wanted to cover No.
I'm absolutely fascinated by the deck. I love it.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is pretty much straight up almost blue-white. It even plays the back to basics in the sideboard, which might actually come in here. We saw David fetch for basic lands a lot, right? So the good chance he brought in back to basics. Of course, the 2 Nylrods, the big haymakers. Disenchant, which we are definitely going to need. Renza probably came in. I could see Meddling Mage, especially if you have stuff to side out. Supreme Verdict, probably Terminus. Terminus is going to be an interesting one versus Swords to Plowshares, since there's only one Hope of Girapur. So once again, the interesting balance of spot removal versus mass removal, and I think there's probably a lot of white cards coming out though. In general.
All right, let's see how this plays out. Again, this is a matchup where barring the Null Rods, the Artifact Storm deck is favored overall, but the Null Rods are hugely important. Congratulations to Kellen Pastore, though. He was arguing on Twitter for playing additional copies of Karn Scion of Urza. And so he played 3, and that's uncommon. And clearly we saw it played a big role there in the outcome.
Yeah, that card is amazing. That card's amazing. I've played it in Vintage and also in similar decks like these, and I sometimes even ended up cutting Karn, the Great Creators, which was probably wrong, but the Scion of Urza has done so much for me, and I'm happy to see it like being really powerful here as well.
All right, so here we go. Game number 3. And we see Kellen with a mana light hand, but lots of hands in this deck are mana light. With the
yeah, I guess we can do kind of like the forced mulligan almost again with the LED and Echo of Eons. But depending on what we draw, we might also be in for maybe even, I know it's probably more like a turn 2 Karn, right? I mean, if we draw Grim Monolith, would that be a turn 1 Karn?
Yes.
3, 1, yeah, 4. Yeah, oh yeah, that would be it.
Yeah. David did mulligan to 5. So both players shy on cards. And again, I would like to see the diamond in immediately. There it is. Now, do you break this? I don't think you can because your opponent mulled to 5. Although if they have Null Rod, that is bad news.
Yeah, if they have Null Rod, you get your Karn down. But does Karn?
Yeah, you do get the Karn down, and the Karn would shut off your opponent's mana for the game.
Oh, because of the Null Rod, yeah.
Yeah.
Just saw that, right? Okay, here we go. So this is just like so nice about the deck. Even if this Karn fails, we can just like redraw 7 if we want to.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing is if they spell pierce this, you probably pay with the LED, right?
Right. And so one thing I would prefer to have done is to have played the redundant Mox first. And so see a Trader's plus 2 Moxes to cast the Karn and then leave the Crystal Vein so that if you need to pay for a Spell Pierce, you have it there. So now Kellen will crank up the Echo with a mana floating and gain a lot of mana and not much else. Kellen's Echoes have not been great so far.
Yeah, we really got to draw into something now, right? We have basically the mana to cast each and every spell we draw, but it's actually a really bad spot when you think about that. There's a good chance that David is going to be able to interact with whatever we draw. We don't even have defense crits out. Yeah. And this is where I'm really scared of Null Rod.
Yeah, this was a really... This deck is fairly dense. There are likely 15 Haymaker cards, and Kellen didn't draw any of them. Counting the 7 Karns, the 4 Mystic Forges, and the 4 lands that tutor, and he came up empty. Even another Echo would have worked. And
or even like at the very least, even something like a Walking Ballista could at least do something and attack with potential Planeswalkers coming down. Yeah. But right now here we're sitting on almost like lethal Fireball mana, I guess.
Yeah. And David had nothing to cast, so he presumably is, and no Brainstorm. So David, he must have a whole bunch of counters, maybe a little bit of removal, and conceivably a Snapcaster Mage, because he has to be holding something.
Okay, and no Chase coming down, no Teferi coming down. Yeah, like you said, it's probably like a bunch of Snapcaster Mages and removal spells, counter spells. Maybe even, something like a Counselor's Judgment, because we are not really presenting anything that Counselor's Judgment would want to remove.
Yeah, that would also fit.
So the golden card to draw here is something that's uncounterable and does something important on the turn it comes down. And I think there's nothing in the deck that does that, right? I guess the very best we have for that is Echo of Eons, because it would need to trade for like 2 counter spells.
I think Echo would be the best because we can actually hardcast it easily right
exactly.
now. Yeah, and so as long as it's not Force of Negation, then there's a good chance we could resolve it.
Okay.
All right. There's something. I'm not even sure we run this out on its own.
Yeah. I mean, if you wait here, maybe there's even a world where David has to 8-card discard. I mean, that's not exactly great for you, but running this out on its own against an opponent who failed to make land drops early on and is now sitting on 7 cards, it's like rough. You almost feel like this is not going to stick. Yeah,
I don't see how this could possibly resolve. So I feel like I'd be in favor of holding on to it. I mean, you risk your opponent drawing Null Rod, but Pitchcast Force. Okay, at least they got 2 cards. I can't believe the Flusterstorm is in the deck.
Yeah, I immediately was like, what does it even counter? I guess Echo of Eons, but that's a very specific sequence of events.
Yeah. The fact that Kellen got 2 cards for that, I think more than justifies him casting it. So that worked in his favor. Again, this is a fairly threat-dense deck, even though it has not appeared that way in Kellen's hands.
Is this us fetching a bunch of islands and then putting Brainstorm on top with... Oh, no, it looks like end step. Snapcast. Okay, I guess that one way or another we were going to get that Brainstorm.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I also saw David playing a Court of Cunning, so the Monarchy might come back into this game as well.
Yeah, that would actually be bad news, because that actually is a mill effect, is it not? And milling a bunch of Echo of Eons would actually be in Kellen's favor.
So yeah, at here we really gotta hit runner. We probably need to hit 3 runners, because I'm not exactly seeing our first or second thing that we draw doing something here, given how the game has played out.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the Mystic Forge didn't get countered by what's it called, Force of Negation, which could have been hardcast, as opposed to like Force Pitch Flusterstorm, which makes me think Force of Negation might not be there in the first place. So maybe there's not that many counter spells, but we don't know. We kind of have to play to our outs, and that is drawing a runner basically every single turn.
Yeah. And Karn Great Creator has now been shut down. There's a Teferi. That's not of great consequence.
I guess you could even, I was going to say you just bounce your own Snapcaster Mage. The thing is, you could keep it in play just for the extra damage, because right now there's nothing to really flashback anyway.
Yeah. And unless it's required as a blue card for a Force Will, but I guess we'll find out. Okay. So wow, that's pretty tough. So Mystic Forge and Karn Great Creator are currently going to be locked out, but
I wonder, since we just talked about how Echo of Eons would be basically the best draw we could find here, whether we actually wanted to name Echo of Eons on the Meddling Mage.
Possibly. I wondered whether a Force Negation was kept in hand in order, because instead of the Force of Will earlier, because Force Negation is nice for the Echo. So
that's true. That's true. But anyway, if he had like hardcast the Force of Negation, he would have still had the Flusterstorm. Yeah, but then still in the graveyard.
Break the Lion's Eye Diamond. You want to break it right now? I guess there's so much mana, maybe it doesn't really matter that much, but generally you want to break it here. But I can understand the argument for not doing it. And Kellen is going to really need to draw. Boy, this is tough with both of the primary cards shut down, having to win off of Ballista, and Ballista would work to clean up the Meddling Mage. And there is a Force of Will. Okay.
It's away. We go for it again. And we know about the Snapcaster in hand, so now I'm actually wondering if we ever get rid of that Meddling Mage.
Yeah, Snapcaster, remember, the Snapcaster's gone now.
Oh, it's gone. Was it pitched? Oh, it was pitched to Force. Okay.
No, it was.
No. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. We weird basically. I was just wondering if we ever get surgical on Karn the Great Creator, what do we actually have left to win the game, and other than Walking Ballista?
Yeah, that would be it. Okay, so I think Kellen probably has to play Karn. So we did draw a defense grid, so Karn Zion, make a token, I guess.
Just make all the tokens in the world and try to get there. I don't hate that. I'm a big fan of just throwing Karn out there and going minus.
I don't know what else is realistic until a Ballista is drawn.
And those tokens are going to be giant. Those are going to be like 8, 10 tens. I don't know.
And Kellen can crank off another Echo here too before David gets to play any of his cards.
Common theme here. People don't want stuff played on their own turn.
Yeah, so this is one of the ways the deck builds up huge advantage is multiple Echoes in the same turn where you play most of your hand while they do not.
So we got the LED. We can put the Echo into the graveyard. Oh man, so I guess we can always wait on using the Karn, yeah, so we just go for this, we draw another 7. What are the other BK makers we could hit? So we found our Karn, the Sign of Ursa, we were probably
There's the
looking, yeah,
ballista.
like the
Oh
one
no.
ballista, yeah, that's the one.
So I thought about whether Karn Great Creator should have been cast just in case we draw ballista later, and I don't know if we had enough mana to make it relevant, but that is what actually happened.
I mean, we couldn't cast it, right? Because of Meddling Mage.
You're right.
But now we can free up some, but we still need to find it. But honestly, I think we might actually be in a good spot, but you can never really know when Nylrod is ready to come down at any point.
Yeah.
I wonder how many Nyrods David has actually seen in these previous 7s and had to shuffle back.
Well, I think, and there's another defense grid in hand too. That can probably wait a turn. I think Kellen's probably just going to make this ballista as big as he can.
So how much mana do we need to be lethal here? 28? I mean, that's a little bit too much even for this deck.
Yeah. But I do... And second defense grid comes down. I would like to see the Mox Opal burned off in order to have the ballista be bigger here if it's relevant.
Also, by the way, I think David only has 2 more minutes left in the clock, right?
You are correct.
So let's see how that's going to go.
Yeah, for people wondering about what Julian just said, the Magic Online default clocks for 40 minutes. During the Swiss, the players get 25 minutes. So at 15, they would time out, unless sometimes there's extra time added on if the players set the match up and started the clock, and then coverage, we had them wait while we getting things ready. It doesn't happen often, but we'll find out if that is the case or not. What is most definitely relevant is that Kellen has put a sizable board together here with a very, very large Karn token.
Yeah, I think at this point, we keep going back to how Karn, Sign of Ursa, is really good against Nylrod, and I think at this point I'd almost be happy to just like see that card if there's nothing else going on. I mean, it's still awkward if mode comes down as well, because now we'd have like Nylrod mode and then a Meddling Mage on Walking Ballista, at which point I'm not sure we could actually win anymore.
No, it would get. I mean, we're already greatly reduced in what we're even capable of doing with the Mystic Forges out of the game. Although one thing that is relevant that does happen is that since they were exiled, Karn can now wish for Mystic Forge, so they can re-enter the game. If it were to actually come down to that.
So in a way, you're saying like if it's countered and then it gets surgical, you're actually giving them access to it again if they don't have one in hand.
Yeah, that does actually happen. And it does actually, and I think that's something that players can very easily not realize is going to happen.
I've seen that with Karn Great Creator done when it wished for a Torment script and then you Torment scripted yourself just to get like a critical piece that was countered before.
Yeah. All right. So Council's Judgment. What are we going after here? I do think Kellen was a little punished here for not making the ballista bigger because they could pick off the Teferi before the Teferi could plus, and now it can't. I don't know if the game will progress to the point where that matters or not. And I do think that, well, we don't know about the time issue, but David is approaching the timeout if nothing has happened.
He's already dead anyways, right?
Yeah,
because now we get to attack him.
He's got the tokens, yeah. Without removal, then he will die the tokens. And yeah, so that was that was an example of a deck fighting uphill in a favorable matchup, but where you really have to fight through a lot of stuff. And hopefully that was entertaining for viewers, a somewhat fringe deck that I myself and other people have put a lot of work in lately, and it's pretty entertaining.
Yeah, you certainly made a good case for this deck. Watching this, I like that you both get to do absolutely broken stuff. And I mean, we're Magic players, we like that. Yeah. But you also really got to know your matchup, right? You got to know the strategy. You got to know what are you supposed to do? How are they going to try to stop you? And that really shone. And I think that paid off really well for our player here.
Yeah, I thought Kellen played that fine. I thought we saw the power of Karn Zion of Ursa really going to work. Myself, I was trying more Hope of Jirapurs and thinking I want to resolve my stuff, and then as opposed to just having more threats. But obviously, there's arguments both ways, and Karn Sign and Versa did a lot of work in both of those sideboard games. Let's go ahead and look at the results of the round. See any players that you're tracking or following along, or any archetypes you're interested in, and see how things have played out. I think we have that available.
I think after 4 rounds, 6 rounds for the total Swiss, I think we could already see the first couple of players who are nearly locked for the top 8 if they're at 4-0.
Mm-hmm. It is worth pointing out again that we are trying this time around. We're not allowing draws, whereas in the past we have allowed intentional draws. So that might impact things, at least as far as that there was forced winners in each of the matches. We can see that Jack Vanilla, the Esper Vile deck that we watched earlier, won this round.
Oh, Mark lost against another F stack. That makes sense because he just sent me a sad smiley early on. Yeah, he just says he concluded this is a really bad matchup for Ramp, and I think that's what you and I agreed on as well, right? Earlier when we saw the deck lists.
Mm-hmm. And we see some more. Let's see what else we have here. Sometimes the entering your archetype on MTG Melee works out great, and sometimes it doesn't. So, for example, Dimir combo, not entirely sure what that is.
Maybe it's Doomsday.
It certainly could be. It could be Doomsday. It could be just a blue-black ad nauseam deck, potentially. It is Doomsday. Okay, we're told by the production it is a Doomsday deck. But yeah, the archetypes are self-reported. So we're up to the mercy of the players being putting in what they classify their own deck as. But yeah, so wow, I think we've had a few matches in a row of or a few rounds in a row of pretty cool games that hopefully we didn't give too short shrift to the Miracles deck, but it is definitely in that matchup. It is the Miracles deck on the defensive, no matter how the games play out, seeing if it can hold up. We actually had a flood of subscribers this last round, so that's fantastic. Maybe you guys are just in love with Julian Knab's commentary, or maybe you thought the matchup was cool, but thank you for that. We are 2 away from unlocking another emote, so that'd be awesome if we can hit that. We're also on the long path towards 10,000 followers, so if you want to follow and get us a little closer to that, that'd be great. Hopefully you enjoyed what you saw this round. We're going to step away, and then we'll be back. Julian's got one more round before Anurag comes in for the afternoon portion of the day, and I think we'll get one more fringe 5-0 list for Julian to analyze for you when we get back. So stick around. We got a couple more rounds of Swiss before the top 8 later on this afternoon. We'll be back.